Alrighty. Hi, hello. I'm your host, Grimmfiend, or you can call me Jay. Don't mind the ambient lighting in the background. Just soothe yourself and get comfortable. And try to make yourself feel as safe as possible. Because tonight we're going to be getting into more horror tales. I hope you had a good day, and I hope that this doesn't ruin it. But I'm going to start to read you some tales from Reddit, specifically the no sleep area. To start things off, here's a story called Instructions for Dating Olivia. The envelope showed up under my door 2 weeks after Olivia moved in. No stamp, no return address, just my name in tight scrawled handwriting. I might have ignored it if I hadn't caught her ex's name on the flap. His name was Mark. Inside was a single sheet of paper titled Tips for Dating Olivia. Before I continue reading, let me just put on the fabled trademark mask. It wouldn't be Grimmfiend's Horror Tales without Grimm involved, alrighty. The list started harmless enough, almost helpful. Her favorite cake is carrot with no raisins. She hates lavender-scented candles. Her birthday is March 14th. Lilies are her favorite. It wasn't until I reached the bottom of the page that something falls off. If she says, the trees are blossoming, reply, life is beautiful. You must get this right. In bold parentheses it says, I laughed even as a chill rippled down my spine. A joke, I thought. His pathetic way of messing with me. Olivia had warned me about Mark. He's manipulative, obsessive, unable to let go. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. It starts. The first time it happened, we were walking through the park. The cherry blossoms were blooming, pink petals floating in the breeze. Olivia stopped, staring at the trees. The trees are blossoming, she said softly, her voice distant, almost reverent. Something in my chest tightened. Without thinking, I blurted, life is beautiful. Her head tilted slightly, and for a moment she just stared at me. Then she smiled warm and soft. Yes, she said, as though I passed some invisible test. The list came back to me that night. I fished it out the trash with frantic hurry and smoothing out the wrinkles. The rules, it stated. It wasn't long before I started relying on a list, every detail lined up perfectly. Her favorite foods, her quirks, even the way she liked her coffee. Following it felt like a cheat code to her heart. But then the rules got even stranger. Always knock twice before entering her apartment, even if she tells you not to. If she hums a tune you don't recognize, hum along. She'll stop after a minute, and it's important that she does. Never look at her reflection in mirrors if she isn't in the room. I genuinely wanted to laugh it off, but the first time I forgot to knock twice, she didn't speak to me for hours. She didn't even seem angry, just off. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Her movement slow and deliberate, like a predator sizing up their prey. When I hummed along to an unfamiliar tune one night, she stopped mid-tune, sighed deeply, and fell asleep. I didn't. There were some cracks in the facade because the list grew longer. I didn't know how I hadn't added to it but new rules started appearing out of nowhere with frantic handwriting. If she sleeps past 3:30 a.m., wake her up immediately. If she doesn't wake up, leave the room. She will never tell you her mother's name. Don't ask and do not try to find out. Burn the list and she'll know. The last thing I did was I tested that last one. Held the corner of the paper over a lighter. The flame leapt unnaturally fast. Black veins started racing through the page. The smoke smelled like something rotting, and Olivia knocked on the door before I could finish. You okay in there? Her voice was light, but something in her tone made me freeze. I never tried burning it again. The whispering. The rules stopped being enough. I started hearing whispers when Olivia wasn't around. Soft, guttural voices coming from nowhere. Once I caught a reflection in a bathroom mirror when she wasn't in the room. It wasn't her face looking back. The eyes were too wide, and the smile was way too sharp. I covered every mirror in the house after that. The nights were the worst. I'd wake up at 3:32 a.m., sweating, my heart pounding, just in time to see her stir. I would shake her awake and she would mumble something before turning over. But one night, I woke up late. She was still, her chest rising and falling with slow, shallow breaths. I reached out to shake her, but her eyes snapped open before I touched her. Those weren't her eyes. It was a dark, endless void that swallowed the room. You're late, she said. I couldn't stay. I couldn't leave. Every time I tried to confront her, she'd tilt her head and smile, and I'd forgotten what I ever wanted to say. Then the final rule appeared at the bottom of the list. The only way out is to pass it on. Find someone else. Leave the list. Don't warn them. I knew what it meant. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down I did. I slipped an envelope under the door of someone Olivia had been texting. Just a friend, she said. A new guy. Inside was a fresh copy of the list, rewritten in my own hand. I moved out the same night, blocked her number, deleted her pictures, but I know she's still out there, and the whispers never stopped. If you're reading this, it's too late. You'll know what to do when the time comes. Just make sure you read the damn rules. Well, that sounds absolutely horrifying. Absolutely horrifying, because if you think about it, it's just, what all did he really go through that he's just not saying, you know? Hold up, I'm having some problems with something. Oh boy. But genuinely imagine, he never really gave the details of what is really going on, if you think about it. Because this Olivia is just, she sounds holly jolly, but absolutely creepy. That one gave me a bit of a shudder. I'll rate that 1/6 of a chicken sandwich. Let's try to find another story. Uh, I think I found one. But let's go for another one. I don't think just yet for that one. Something walks past my house every night at 3:03. Hmm. You know what? I do not want to read that one yet. Huh, can't find nothing. Ah, we found one. How ironic. The title of this one is called Don't Let Them In. Addiction took our mother over very slowly, rocked her through it, and sung her to the sleep, sunk deep into the mattress on her bed. When her back teeth fell out, she left them on the side of the bathtub. Happened when I was 7, and I kept them in a matchbox. The missing pieces of her kept safe so she wouldn't be lost forever. So maybe one day we could put her back together. Our house fell down around us, and we tried our best to raise ourselves. It was hard. It was difficult. The ceilings had water damage, and the bottom stairs had dried, not in the winters, although the radiator would bleed rust. It was still our home, and Annie made it a home. That would be my sister. She mothered me with lopsided band-aids on bruised knees and lukewarm microwave meals. She told me ghost stories and didn't mind when I crawled into her bed whenever I got too scared. She taught me how to dance, barefoot on the living room carpet, music channel on full volume on the TV, shaking her hips. Shit. Sorry about that slight delay. She taught me a lot of things. She even let me shower first so that way the water was hot for me. Never complaining whenever it was cold. She brushed my hair. And Annie was dark haired like her father, whoever he had been, but I was a blonde. Annie was desperate to be blonde too, like Marilyn Monroe, like Mom was. I think she thought it would have made them closer, remind Mom less of her dad. I'd give anything for her to have her hands in my hair one more time, even if it hurt. She moved to New York when I turned 18 and never came back. I still dream about her sometimes. Keeping up with our mom was impossible, and we learned at a young age we would always be left behind. It didn't make it any easier when she was drinking the light she shone would wake us up at 3 a.m. with pancakes dripping in cherry syrup. Sometimes when the weather was right and she'd have enough, just drinking alone, she would call her school up and tell them we both had come down with summer sickness and we'd drive to the beach instead. I remember being 9 years old in the back seat of the car coming home after one of those ocean days, sucking the salt from my fingers. Annie just dyed her hair blonde, and her best friend Jane helped her, bending over our sink. From behind, I couldn't tell who was our mother and who was the daughter. Radio up and windows down, blowing the sky inside. When she was drinking heavy, she would just be out all night, hair piled up like a beauty queen. I'm going to skip forward a little bit because they're just describing the mom and how Mom was just, she'd been through a lot, and She used to just drink the pain away and everything. When Mom drank too much, it was the worst. She'd laugh too loud, too long at anything and everything until her mouth started to shake and she just kept crying. At the breakfast table, onto her cereal, Annie shut down when Mom was like this. Something deep inside of herself where nobody could hurt her. She'd stay up into the morning watching movies on just black and white. She'd wipe my tears away too because I would cry. We often took turns picking her up. Mom, I mean. It was October and I was 13. Annie was 16. One of those days that I can remember. She'd call from us from the morning where her voice was just slurring. When she asked me if I had a good birthday, I hung up on her. My birthday had been the day before. It just made me shudder. Because Mom was gone for 2 days around that time. Annie always gave me presents, though. I never asked how she got the money, no nothing, I never cared. We taken the bus down to the beach, eating the birthday cake and everything. But one Wednesday night when me and Annie weren't speaking, hunger hung very heavy. We both laugh about it because our stomachs would start to growl and stuff like that, and it just sounded really, really funny. But just like Mom, Annie started drinking a bit too. I knew that she'd never be able to get back up, sometimes just from drinking. Sometimes I stared down at her and all I could see was Mom. I was running, feet slamming down the hallway like a heartbeat. I'd run for the kitchen and tipped every bottle we had down the sink, shoving Annie back as she fought, just catching liquor on her fingers as it fell. She grabbed my shoulders and made me drop the very last bottle. It smashed it between the floor. Outside, those open windows, the sky turned pale gold. Clouds, a mess of pink and cream smeared across the horizon. I cried. I cried a lot. Annie was on her knees picking up the pieces. She always tried to fix things even if they were too late. We sat in silence. With every bite of the TV dinner that she made, I forgave her. Mom never cooked no nothing. Ever since I was a kid, though. She wasn't sober, no none of that, but Annie wasn't Mom. We were washing the dishes when we first heard it. I tilted my head to listen, and it was crying. I figured it was Mika, the 2-year-old next door, having a temper tantrum loud enough for everyone to hear. I always wanted to feed him when he was around, but Annie always stopped me, saying once you start giving, they never stop taking. Turns out it was Mika, the 2-year-old cat. And I just really wanted to help her, but like I said, Annie wouldn't let me. Annie flipped open the Christmas lights. My bad, I forgot to mention that it was Christmas around this time. And we just sat on the porch on those plastic beach chairs watching the sky. And jeez. What is it? This next part's a bit hard for me to just recollect and remember. I remember thinking that we saw Mika, and I said it must be Mika to Annie. Maybe he walked around the back. Shit, do you want to call Connie and tell her we'll bring him over? No, nothing. Annie didn't reply, and I sighed and rolled my eyes. Guess I'll do everything then. I stepped off the porch, grass soft against my heels. The air smelled like it might rain, fresh and clean, a promise unfulfilled. Annie's voice was strained. I turned to her, smiling. It died on my face when I saw the look on her. Get inside. Now. She was staring at into the dark. Whatever it was. She just went past me, opened the door with one hand, fingers fumbling on the catch. I froze barefoot in the dirt. I figured what she was looking at. In the bushes by the back fence was a person, crouched with their knees tucked up neat under the chin, arms wrapped around legs, their mouth hung open wide, softly opening and closing as he cried, like a child lost in the dark. But that wasn't a child, it was someone pretending, mimicking those sounds, opening and closing out into the darkness. Suddenly they straightened up, snapping upright, face still hidden by the darkness. They were tall and thin, but too thin to be a normal person. Panic made me move, as my animal instincts just came in. And I remember just being faster than Annie. I dragged her inside and slammed the door behind us, hearing it bounce on its hinges as I locked it. We watched as a person slowly walked towards the house, steps deliberate but long. Annie reached for my hand, holding me tight, and me turning to face her, holding my shoulders. Don't turn around, Emmy. Don't turn around, she said. Instinctively, I started to look over my shoulder out into the darkness. Annie grabbed my face hard and shook her head. I knew then that she was serious. Her voice cracked, and she cleared her throat, gripping my hand tight enough to hurt, nails digging in, grounding herself. I looked down at our fingers in our lock, both of us grown from the same bones. I'm gonna call the cops and everything is going to be... Her voice faltered and tears spilled over her lashes, dripping like the promise of rain. But then I remembered something. Annie never cried. Your phone's on the couch, she whispered, and ball crawled its way up my throat. Her phone was upstairs charging. A soft tap, tap filled the silence. Annie turned to the window, eyes white, showing her eyes were so wide. It was the sound of someone's forehead against the glass slowly, over and over. Then it started to speed up faster and harder, skin meeting the glass until it was slamming through the window hard enough to shake the panes. The tapping stopped, and I was about to ask Annie if I could look now when she screamed, followed by the sound of cracking glass. To the loudest slam yet. Whoever was in our yard just bashed their face hard enough into the window to break it. Sorry for that slight delay. My headset wanted to basically click out. But without further ado, let's get back into it. Hopefully you haven't shat yourself yet. We ran upstairs. At the same time, skipping the ones caved in, dry, rot on instinct. I turned behind me, and once Andy yanked my face back before I could see, the sound of broken glass echoed behind us as we made it into the bathroom. We locked the door. A thin wailing cry like a baby calling for its mother filled the hallway, echoing. Trapped between the walls and locked doors. Annie threw her back against the door, feet jammed up against the bathtub, clutching the knife she had grabbed from the kitchen. I did the same, shoulder to shoulder. Slow footsteps started on the stairs, deliberate and casual. The crying had become something mocking, almost like laughter. Shrill bursts of sound and then giggles, high-pitched and abruptly stopping before starting again. over and over for what seemed like a goddamn eternity. But then the first door on the upstairs floor was my bedroom, and we heard a distinct sound of it slamming open. It was looking for us. What the fuck is going on? I asked Annie, not even bothering to brush away the tears that couldn't stop falling from me. I watched my sister pick herself up off the floor and brace her hands on the door as we heard the sound of a second door slamming open. Mom's room. The next room in the hallway was the bathroom. Annie pulled me to my feet and handed me the knife. I shook my head and pushed it back to her. She was terrified of what would happen. I was terrified too, in the event that we had to use it. But Annie shoved me and pressed the knife into my thumbs, thumb pressing hard enough on the tip to make it bleed. I watched my sister's blood drip from her wrists, a windowing red road, still pushing into my hands despite the pain. I then took the knife. Something slammed against the wall that was Mom's room shared with the bedroom. A high-pitched wail followed. I held my breath, could feel my heart beating in the base of my throat, a wild and frantic thing. I'm gonna get the phone from my room. I shook my head violently, about to argue. Annie clamped a hand over my mouth. I could taste the blood on her hand, salty and sweet, like birthday cake by the ocean. Yes, I'm gonna grab the phone. I'm gonna call the cops and we're gonna be okay. I shook my head again. It's the only way. When I go, I need you to lock the door and you don't open it for nothing. Nothing. Promise me. I shook my head and Annie pressed her hand into my mouth, crushing my teeth against my lips so it made my eyes water. I promise. I promise. Something smashed in the room next door. Annie brushed the hair off my face, gently tucking it behind my ear. Promise, she mouthed. Again. And I did. I watched the curve of her shoulder disappear into the black hall outside like the moon in the eclipse. And then she was gone. I couldn't move or breathe for a second, and then I slammed the bolt shut just as something bounced off the outside of the door. A high-pitched scream followed, handle rattling up and down hard enough to pop one of the screws. I watched it roll towards me on the tiles. Then silence. I sat with my back to the door, holding the knife and wishing I was still holding Annie's hand. But still nothing, just silence, except for my lungs slowly filling up the room with my breath. "Em?" came a voice through the door. I started gripping the knife, and it said, "Honey, what's going on?" "Mom?" My voice cracked. "Mama, is that you?" I wrapped my arms around myself, shaking, just trying to keep still. "Sweetie, it's okay, just open the door. It's okay, just let me in." The handle rattled again, but gentler. "Just let me in, it's okay." She banged on the door and I took my handle at the bolt. "Honey, I'm sorry. So sorry I missed your birthday. I'm a terrible mother." Her voice just kept broken and she started to cry. "Just let me in, baby. I'm so sorry." I screwed my eyes shut. She sounded so sad and lost. I just wanted her to hold me like when I was a kid. And whenever I come off the swings with a scraped knee, maybe this time she meant it. Maybe it will be okay. But then something just made me freeze and my blood just run cold. My sister's voice. "Yeah, Em, let us in. It's all okay." Annie never called me by my full name, 'cause the next thing I knew, she called me Emil. This was a guarantee, just never. But then a hand banged against the door, rattling the handle. "Emil, let us in." The voice from Annie became so low and guttural, followed by the same shrill giggling from before. Mom spoke now, pleading and crying, with the voice getting louder. "Let us in. Let us in, let us in, over and over, punctuated by the fist on the door. I thought about demons and monsters, all the bedtime stories we pray don't crawl from underneath our bed. That's not my sister and you're not my mother. I screamed through the door, hands over my head. I crawled into the bathtub and curled like a ball, cradling myself. Knife clutched to my chest. I didn't know what it was outside, but I knew it wasn't both of them. And it's terrified me to my core, and I just hid in that bathtub hoping it would all go away. But then it just started singing happy birthday out of nowhere. It was like a never-ending nightmare. I was breathing frantically, and that's all you could hear. Bangs and yells came from upstairs, followed by the footsteps of people running. A low guttural howl ripped through the house, filling the room until I felt like I was drowning in the sound, and then the door was kicked in. I screamed, covering my eyes, just waiting to die. Arms found me and lifted me from the bathtub. My eyes were still covered. I looked at the outside of the door as I was carried downstairs. It was covered in long, scraping marks, dragged down to the floor. Pillows ripped apart. The hallway and the soft down like it looked like it just snowed inside. I watched them drift slowly as men in uniforms checked each of the rooms that looked like something had been torn apart by something feral. Outside were police cars and an ambulance. In the middle of all of it was Annie, bathed in blue and red light as it washed over her, lit up in the dark like a neon angel. Face aglow. I threw myself from the cop's shoulder and ran to her. We both held each other, broken pieces and all, standing all those constellations together. We just sat by the ambulance. Annie gently turned my head away, smiling so sadly it made my chest ache. Turns out there was no demon, no wild animal or bad men trying to break in. Just Mom, out of her mind on booze and drugs and everything in between, coming to the end of a long week binge. Something had finally broken inside her, and this time we couldn't put her back together no matter how hard we tried. Sometimes you fall one last time and you never get back up. Annie had seen her in the garden, blood dribbling from her mouth, track marks bulging on their forearms like unmapped roads, rail thin and desperate for one more hit, one more fix. She searched the kitchen for all the drink I'd thrown away, and when she didn't find it, she tried coming for the stash she hid in the bathroom. She hadn't wanted me, just the drugs on the other side of the door, so high she could mimic Annie's voice perfectly. Turns out the real monsters are the ones that eat you alive slowly. The kind that come in a bottle or a needle at the end of the long list of reasons why you can't get out of bed in the morning. Sometimes the monsters aren't the ones you raise or love the most. It's just, it can even be that. But it's up to you if you let them in. Absolutely horrifying to think the children that you have, or maybe you are the child of someone who is this something perceived as a monster, horrifying them out of a point beyond your control. Sounding like a banshee, a wild animal, just obsessed with getting this one last hit. It all makes sense, but at the same time it doesn't. It shouldn't. Let's check out one more thing and then we'll leave it be. By leave it be, I mean Who we? Ah. I worked security at Disney World. Well, I did, is the title of this story. I work in security of Disney World, the happiest place on earth. Typically, I wouldn't say where I work, as obviously there are some pretty strict rules about things employees can put online, but I just don't think I can tell this properly without that context. And honestly, I think this may be it for me or with this job. I just can't see myself working here anymore. I've been with the company for 23 years. The first 20 years I worked in the parks, nabbling shoplifters and rounding up people who were drinking too much for the heat. Occasionally there'd be a fight to break up, but people usually kept it pretty mild. The heat and walking was getting too much for the last few years, so I asked to be transferred somewhere else with the AC, and the company moved me to one of their resorts, which was real nice. While the working conditions were 110% better as far as climate and comfort go, the guests were trickier, mainly domestics. I guess the expensive and stress of vacation got to a lot of people, and I'd be called on by neighboring rooms because some mom and dad were yelling at each other. I tried to suggest that they take a nap or go do separate activities for a bit to usually go and calm them down. But none of that is what I'm here for. I gotta get it out this time. 3 days ago, I received something from management. Apparently, a couple of days before that, housekeeping had went into a room that should have been turned over that day. And all of the guest items were still in that room. Housekeeping made a note of it, then they moved on. But during the next 2 days, when they entered the room, everything was still there and untouched. I went to check it out, and sure enough, an empty room full of luggage, clothes, snacks, some toys, everything a family would need for vacation. The manager had already looked at the preservation of all of this, and it was for a family. A dad, mom, and 2 kids. I tried to call the phone numbers they had given, but all I got was voicemail. We were a bit stumped, so I made the call that the housekeeper could clean the room and take the family's personal items to be held until we got in contact with someone. I went digging into this reservation some more. The family had arrived 5 days before housekeeping discovered all their stuff. I found that the family had paid the parking fee and their vehicle description was listed. A quick walk of the parking lots and I could easily locate their vehicle. So that ruled out a car accident or them deciding to just leave all their stuff behind. Next, I saw that they had bought a dining plan. This is where a guest prepays for all of their food. They're given the certain number of credits to use for meals. This family had only used 3 credits, and the last one was 2 days after they checked in. It appeared on the thing the day that they arrived. They got here late and probably just stayed on the resort. The next day they used 2 credits at Epcot. The second day at the park they used 1 credit at Magic Kingdom, and it was at breakfast time. Whew. You're asking me? I'm pretty sure that stuff is wildly expensive, but right back to it. Now at Disney we have something called magic bands. Magic bands are worn by the guests and act as a room key, a park ticket or a credit card, dining reservation payment, fast pass, and more. It took some work, but I was finally able to look up this family's fast pass history. That day they went to the Magic Kingdom, breakfast at the restaurant, rode a couple of rides, the typical family stuff. Finally it was time to bring someone else in on this. I called an old coworker at Magic Kingdom and asked him to pull up the security footage for It's a Small World. At the time they wrote it, and I made my way there. When I got there, my friend was confused, distraught looking. He showed me what he found. There's usually a camera in the direction of where the rides load and unload. The footage showed them scanning their bands to use fast passes for the ride and boarding it. The footage from the exit of the ride just showed the other people in their car just waiting, but they weren't there. Of course, we thought the worst. Maybe one of the kids had fallen out in the mom and dad, and the other kid got off in the middle to help, and they all got injured or worse, killed or stuck in the machinery somewhere. So we shut down the ride, middle of the damn day, turned off that earworm music and turned off the lights. Me and my buddy walked that ride 3 times before we called in help. Eventually, there was close to 10 cast members searching, and we had found shit except for 3 cell phones and a hat. I was right stumped. I've kept digging the past few days, and I'm not sure who to tell what I found. Because I called the police and I suppose they're on their way. But the company has a way of covering things up like this, and I decided I can't live with myself if I don't put out some type of warning. I kept digging into the reservation the last few days, and I noticed that they purchased a memory maker. There's photographs and all the other type of stuff. They automatically get added to a guest Disney account whenever the system knows their picture has been taken, and the system always knows. Everyone's whereabouts are always known with the magic bands. Well, I opened up that memory maker album, and I swear there's 732 photos. The first 30 are pretty normal. Epcot, a few rides. The rides only take one picture per go round. So it seems that they've written this so much that it was over 700 times. First pick was pretty normal, everyone looked happy and etc. And it was a busy day, full of guests in the cars. The next one was rough to look at. The car is empty except for this little family, and they look so damn confused. The next 10 to 15, I can see the dad getting angry, yelling. Mom is holding on to those kids like her life depends on it. And you can see the kids getting increasingly upset and more. After 50, it looks like they're trying to get out, and one, the dad was missing. In another, they're all gone. It looked like they all tried to bail or leave early, but in the very next one, they're right back in that car. It happened around 450 pictures, but I only see the mom and kids. It's just when I look closely, I can see the dad, maybe just his body now, slumped down in one of the other seats. Since about 675, there's just mom and one kid. Another body in another seat. The mom and kid aren't moving anymore. I think the two of them are still alive, just catatonic, looking straight ahead, just pale. And I swear on my life, the dolls are moving or something in some of these pictures. I can tell they weren't where they used to be. I even saw one with a doll in the car with his family. This is something just uncanny and definitely not Disney-like. I can't look at this anymore or else I'm going to lose my lunch. So I closed the album. This file size has increased since I closed it. Are there new pictures being added? I see on security cameras that the local PD just arrived, so they'll take over soon, and that's going to be their thing. I don't know what or who or just any of that. I'm just going to walk out of here and never come back. I just wanted to get all of this out there before Disney feeds the media some BS cover-up as to why the family vanished. They didn't vanish. I know exactly where they are. Shoot, there's even some people basically saying, do not fuck with Small World. Well. Well. Okay, sorry about that. My headset decided to turn off again. Well, that was a very interesting story about how the dolls of Small World essentially came to life and just that family's still there. There's even some people claiming to be ex-cast members saying, "Do not fuck with Small World" in the comments. So, ooh boy. I'd rate that 2/5 of a chicken sandwich. Well, if you made it this far and at the end of the video, just type in Small World. In the meantime, I'm going to take a nap and enjoy myself and more because, well, it's 5 in the morning, so thank you for sticking around for Grimm's Horror Tales. Please have a good one.